Hello, everyone. My name is Miles Sarill, National Educator for CV Sciences, makers of PlusCBD oil. And it is my pleasure today to present on the topic of gut health and how hemp and CBD might be involved with that. I also really want to thank everybody at Tulsi at the Market. About this time a year ago, I gave a big lecture in person, and if it weren't for COVID and a number of other crises, I would have liked to have been there in person this year. Let's make it happen next year. But yeah, let's get this started. There's a lot of information to get going through. And there's a couple of points that I want to make. So first off, I'm not here to sell you on anything in particular, okay? Actually, today, I really just want to make this extremely informational. Now, I'm not a doctor, I have a master's of science, but I'm not here to provide you with any treatments or to talk about curing any diseases with CBD. That being said, we're going to be talking about a lot about the latest research that is occurring as it applies to CBD, and sometimes that research does have to do with medical terms. And really, what I want to focus on is, yes, this is gut health, but I want to build some connections and help us understand that gut health is more than just how are you digesting your food and going to the bathroom. And I'll give you a story. I'm going to start this off by telling you a story. I was at the big natural product show, Expo, last year, and I was on the radio with nutrition expert Dr. Garko. And I'm telling him about some facts that I've learned, and something like must have gone off for him as a light bulb in terms of what I was saying. And he kind of opened his mouth a little bit. He turned to stare at me. His eyes were shining, and he said, "Yes, you're right, Miles." This is on the radio. "Yes, you're right, Miles. What happens to your gut changes the destiny of your entire health. What happens to your gut changes the whole system-wide health. What happens to your gut impacts the brain, the skin, so on and so forth." So even though the topic of today is gut health, we are really talking about whole body, holistic systems health through fixing the gut. Okay, so let's get to the science. I'm going to ask you to put it on your thinking caps. We're going to be talking a lot about different scientific biological concepts today and really draw some different connections. Take a look at this. Gut health is a term increasingly used in the medical literature and by the food industry, and it covers multiple positive aspects of the GI tract, such as effective digestion and absorption of food, the absence of GI illness, normal and stable intestinal microbiota. We're going to be talking a lot about our microbiome, what that means and how that impacts our health, effective immune status, and state of overall well-being. That's what we're talking about. And at the same time, we are talking about CBD. And there's a lot of buzz about CBD. This ingredient has totally gone viral. You can find it at the gas station. Don't buy it at the gas station, buy it at Tulsi. What is CBD? It is an ingredient from hemp, and emerging research suggests it has benefits in the areas of stress, pain, inflammation, mood, so on and so forth. In fact, users of PlusCBD oil are reporting feeling more comfortable in their own skin. They just feel better overall. Now, CBD is not a magic bullet. Even though I just explained that CBD helps stress, pain, inflammation, mood, blah, blah, blah. It turns out that by impacting a number of different biochemical processes in the body, CBD might have a normalizing or balancing effect on our healthy human processes. You might remember me talking about our endocannabinoid system if you heard me speak in person last year. One aspect that I want to focus on today is the relationship between the brain and the GI tract, the gut. Asking the question, what does stress, pain, inflammation, and mood have to do with the gut? Well, it actually has to do quite a lot with the gut. And one reason for this is that 70% of your body's immune system is located right around the gut, right around the small intestines, right around the large intestines, okay? And that the interactions between the gut, the immune system, and the brain, that axis is going to spell out Well, it might hash out the destiny of your health. You know, are you feeding your health properly? Are you taking in the right supplements, or more importantly, food, brightly colored fruits and vegetables that can normalize the relationship between your gut, your immune system, and your brain? So part of the relationship I want to hash out for you, and I think that this is something that a lot of us might be feeling, especially within the past couple of months, related to COVID, related to a number of crises that are occurring. Take a look. Stress shuts down the immune system so that you can run for your life. Stress and immunity are diametrically opposed. Okay. They both require a lot of cellular energy. You know, if you've ever been sick, you don't have enough energy to get out of bed, right? Like when you were really hit with influenza or something like that. Conversely, when you're in fear conditions, stress hormones shut down the immune system so that you can run for your life. Stress hormones are delivered in creams. Hydrocortisone is a stress hormone in a cream that you use to shut down the immune reaction when you have a rash. So I want you to think about the balance between stress and immunity. And what we really need to do is basically balance the seesaw through proper nutrition, but also lifestyle. Turn off the news for a moment, take deep breaths, exercise a little bit, right? That might expel some of the pent-up stress hormones that is shutting down your immune system so that your body's not properly functioning. And what happens when your immune system is not properly functioning, get this, inflammation and immunity are two sides of the same coin. Now, a lot of people realize this, but I need to remind a lot of people of this fact. They're two sides of the same coin. Excess inflammation is the bad guy here. But transient inflammation, well, that's a little bit like the Friedrich Nietzsche, right? What doesn't kill us makes us stronger part of inflammation. That you need exercise, and that the achiness post-exercise is the little bit of inflammation that stimulates your muscles to repair, that stimulates your blood sugar to normalize, that helps your brain feel pretty good. Having little bits of inflammation builds balance. It builds tolerance to the world around you. Kids that grow up rolling around in the mud have stronger immune systems and less allergies than kids that grew up in sterile city environments. Because we need to experience low levels of transient, occasional stressors and inflammation providers in order to build a healthy immune system. The problem becomes when you're unable to resolve that inflammation. When you're unable to resolve inflammation, that is what creates disease. That's the chronic inflammation. Now, chronic inflammation might be at the crux of basically every disease of aging that Western allopathic medicine does not have a good answer for. Lifestyle can contribute to it. Are you a couch potato? Diet can contribute to it. Toxin exposure can contribute to it. Do you consume alcohol and cigarettes every day, right? Like that, those are various toxicants that can prolong or impact the processes underlying chronic inflammation. Now, it's not like being a couch potato and then eating Twinkies and smoking a cigarette, once or twice is all of a sudden going to cause you to have cancer. Rather, it's a lifetime of poor choices and poor dieting that sort of adds fuel to the fire, and the fire grows, and eventually you're age 50 and your joints really, really hurt. It manifests for people in different ways. And it turns out that a lot of it really has to do with what happens in the gut. And that's something we're going to be talking about pretty shortly. So keep in mind that also when I talk about chronic inflammation, sometimes it can be low-grade chronic inflammation, that it does not manifest as pain or redness or irritation right away, that the chronic low-grade inflammation impacts you in more subtle ways. You're unable to get up in the morning as easily. You feel fatigued. You feel gloomy for no reason. You have kind of a sluggish digestion. You have a persistent rash, but it's not all over the place. It's just a little bit annoying, right? I mean, if you see any of yourselves in just sort of these minor irritations, I mean, just think about now what you can do to alter the course of your destiny to avoid some of these more challenging issues later on. The body is incredibly receptive to nutrition. We just need to make sure that we're providing the immune system with what it needs to turn off inflammation when it is too much. And that's this next part of the problem, right? How do you make sure that you have the right type of durable immunity to help prevent you from, dare I say, COVID or whatever, not that I'm making any claims here, versus the excess autoimmunity, inflammation that plagues all too many Americans, by and large. So then the last relationship I'll sort of point out for you is that inflammation and stress can feed each other, which is a little bit funny because I just said previously that stress and the immune system are opposed. But it turns out that if all the time your body's under stress, if all the time you're anxious, you're stuck to the news, and it's sort of triggering this paper tiger response, right? You feel like you're in danger, even though your body's physically not in danger. Your heart races when you see like a exciting Netflix show. Maybe if you're doing that all the time, then that's causing a stress response that's inappropriate. That can decouple the immune system from the mechanisms that it requires to say stop the inflammation. So actually over time, stress can prolong inflammation because the immune system stops listening to itself to say no. Thankfully, one of the reasons why it appears that CBD is so popular is because people feel it. People take CBD and they do feel better. And maybe it's a placebo, but there's actually some really good science coming out demonstrating that CBD is able to both modulate the stress response and block some of its effects, as well as modulate the inflammation response and block some of their effects too. So really, if you have a nutrient that is able to tamp down on some of the excess stress, inflammation, dysregulation, I honestly think everybody should be taking CBD every day. The same way that we would consider taking a multivitamin, the same way that we might consider taking an adaptogen herb like ashwagandha or reishi mushroom, that there's good rationale for taking CBD as a daily supplement. All right, so keep all of that tucked in the back of your forebrain because we are going to now get more specifically into the guts of this presentation today. So just to totally be clear, what is the gut? The digestive tract. It's everything from the mouth to the anus. It is stomach and small intestines, blah, blah, blah. All right. But specifically today, we're going to be talking a lot about the intestines because they are what house the majority of our microbiome. Now, one thing that I want to point out for you is that the gut, even though it feels very much like the inside of your body, in some ways, it's kind of like the outside of your body. What do I mean by that? All of us are basically big walking donuts, that from mouth to anus, the digestive tract is a singular tube. So even though the inside of your intestines feels like the inside of your body, it is kind of like the frontier separating the outside environment from the inside of your body. So I want to pose a kind of thought for you then. Oftentimes, skin irritations and rashes are caused by digestive issues or caused by food sensitivity issues. Kids eating eggs when they're allergic to it, for example, can often cause a rash. Our skin is continuous with the lining of our gut. By nature of so the topology I just explained over here. We're all big walking donuts. We're all one tube. We sort of are built around the tube of our GI tract. So one thing that we're going to talk a lot about today is leaky gut, and that if the lining of the inside of that tube starts to leak or break or crack, then it can let in bacterial toxins, undigested food particles, and other things to trigger what is truly inside of your body, your immune system, inflammatory processes, so on and so forth. And that one of the things is that stress can really worsen the quality of the lining of that gut. So one of the first ways in which leaky gut related imbalances show up in humans for a lot of people are rashes, are eczema, psoriasis. It's literally a red flag that shows up on your body and says, hey, something's happening, take care of that. More on that soon. Let's talk about the microbiome. I've thrown around this word a couple of times here. Bacteria, these rod-shaped organisms over here, single-cell organisms, make up the majority of your microbiome. These single-cell organisms quickly replicate. They replicate sometimes as quickly as once every hour. Your human cells replicate once every 24 hours by and large. So these things are going to divide to the tens of thousands to millions by the time that one of your human cells divides. They can be infectious or they can be commensal. They can be good guys. It really depends on time and place. Normally we think of good bacteria and bad bacteria, kind of like we might say, oh, you know, E. coli is a bad bacteria if it's in the water. Streptococcus, staphylococcus, you know, those are generally bad bacteria to have. But sometimes staph and strep can be good. It just depends on where they are in the body and what they're doing exactly. The human microbiome encompasses colonies of bacteria in the skin, in the mouth, the GI tract, so on and so forth. Bacteria are everywhere. The number of bacteria that have been estimated in the body could be as much as 10 to 3 times more than the number of human cells. So I just want you to pause and think for a moment that you are 10 times more bacteria than you're human, that you're host to all of these critters. And it's really only recently that scientists have begun to understand the importance that this forgotten organ has in our health, that we're more bacteria than we're human, and we're just now starting to understand, oh, wait a minute, that might have to do something with how you're feeling day to day. It's not just bacteria. We're not going to get into this as much, but fungi such as Candida, for example, and also even certain types of viruses also make up a part of your microbiome. Now, where do we get our microbiome from? We get them from what we eat. Kimchi, you know, think about a lot of the traditional fermented foods, sauerkraut, yogurts, cheeses. I mean, when Swiss cheese, the fermentation of the milk by bacteria creates gas that creates these little bubbles and pockets in the cheese. You know, there's some probiotics or there's some bacteria in many different food sources. And if you think about how babies sample their environment, you know, when they're really young, they're touching everything on the floor, they're sticking it in their mouth, let them. Even if they catch a cold from licking the hand railing at the airport, it's, you know, that impacts the immune system. That tells the immune system what they can expect later in life. You know, so it is actually desirable to be consuming all sorts of environmental antigens by way of, you know, fermented foods and dirt and whatnot. You know, don't wash your vegetable. If you have organic vegetables, let there be a speck of dirt on them before you eat them. Now, it's a different story if they're factory farmed because you really want to wash off all the pesticides and glyphosate that disrupt the microbiome. That's another reason why we're going to learn about how Americans, by and large, have very poor microbiomes, and it might have to do with overuse of factory farming, big agri-related pesticides, glyphosate, Roundup really can be destructive towards the flora in your gut because these bacteria protect you. The good guy bacteria are probiotic. So over here, this image is of Lactobacillus acidophilus. It's kind of like the most prototypical of probiotic bacteria that you can find in the refrigerator section at Tulsi when you go to buy a probiotic capsule. They compete infectious bacteria. They outcompete your staph, your strep, your candida, so on and so forth, and make sure that you're staying healthy. They make vitamins for you. There are probiotics that make vitamin B12 for you, that make other B vitamins, that synthesize vitamin K2 for you, okay? We need these probiotics in order to feed us. They promote digestion of macronutrients, fiber. When you're eating the right types of fiber, you help to expand the amounts of these types of probiotic bacteria. These are the so-called prebiotic fibers, can feed the probiotics. And they can stimulate the immune system. They have anti-allergic effects. They normalize immune activity. It really is sort of a homeostatic builder. And quite fascinatingly, they regulate hormone and neurotransmitter function. It's really cool that it turns out that certain lactobacillus can actually build neurotransmitters that might be involved with healthy outcomes in mood, etc. So this is one of the potential links between the brain and the gut, is what it is that probiotics such as lactobacillus might be doing in the body. I'm going to show you this article over here. It's a peer-reviewed article. Bacterial neuroactive compounds produced by not probiotics, psychobiotics. What a cool name. Scientists come up with all sorts of funky stuff. Take a look at this. Several molecules with neuroactive functions such as GABA, serotonin, baby, catecholamines, acetylcholine, have been reported to be microbially derived, isolated from bacteria within the human gut. If you're eating the right fiber and probiotic foods, fermented foods, kefir, then it might actually encourage your gut to make happy hormones and sleep hormones and relaxation hormones, motivation hormones, neurotransmitters, dopamine, stuff like that. So I actually was just reading an article today on psychobiotics, so I just had to include, this is a new slide. Nobody else has seen this when I give a presentation. It takes guts. That substances may be secreted by bacteria and microbes into the gut, may infiltrate the blood vessels for a direct ride into the brain, various neurotransmitters. They may stimulate cells in the gut lining that stimulate nerves such as the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is encouraged or balanced or engaged when you're meditating. Deep breathing exercises engage the vagus nerve. And when we're eating fermented foods, it might also engage the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is part of your rest and digest response, and it's opposed to the fight or flight that a lot of us might be experiencing due to current events. More indirectly, microbes activate other cells in the gut lining, which stimulate hormones throughout the body that might have to do with controlling appetite or overall good mood. And as we're going to be talking about a lot more, and we've already been talking about a bit, gut microbes influence immune cells and inflammation, which can impact the brain. Your microbiome is an ecosystem. My microbiome is different than Travis's microbiome. I bet Travis actually eats healthier than I do. Is different than your microbiome, okay? Everybody's microbiomes are going to be different based on host genetics, based on how much you exercise, based on how much simple sugars you eat versus complex starches versus fiber versus red meat. Red meat can have a really depleting effect on the microbiome repeatedly. Versus medications. What antibiotics? You know, I mean, there's studies that actually show that when you take antibiotics, it is likely to cause depression because you're wiping out some of the good bacteria that I've just illustrated might help the brain feel better. So I've just illustrated a number of different impacts to the gut. But if you were to ask me what really is the #1 cause of gut health to become poor in the United States among Americans, I would say it's the standard American diet, right? It's simple sugars and red meat, not enough veggies, a lot of yellow foods, a lot of oily foods, not enough brightly colored fruits and vegetables can have a very depleting effect on the microbiome. And I believe that that is underlying a number of different Americans' chronic health issues, cancers, heart disease. Heart disease isn't just because you eat these French fries and then the oil gets stuck in your arteries. It might have a immune dysfunction component, inflammation dysfunction component that starts in the gut. Take a look at this. Cell, one of the most prestigious scientific journals. U.S. immigration westernizes the human gut microbiome and depletes it. U.S. immigration is associated with loss of gut microbiome diversity. U.S. immigrants lose bacterial enzymes associated with plant fiber degradation. Loss of diversity increases with obesity and is compounded across generations. And that immigrants from Thailand, this is the group that they were tracking here, they have a lot of a certain type of microbe that is associated with breaking down plant fiber. And as they stick around in the United States for longer and have kids, those microbiomes in subsequent generations become depleted of that plant responsive type of bacteria. And oftentimes the diversity of their microbiomes are overall depleted. And this is associated with poor outcomes in metabolism. It's not just food though. That the overuse of medications, not just antibiotics, can have a depleting effect on the gut bacteria as well. Take a look at this. 27% of non-antibiotic drugs. I'm talking about clobazam. I'm talking about SSRI antidepressant drugs. I'm talking about, anti-anxiety drugs. Psychiatric medications inhibited the growth of at least one species. Side effects of these non-antibiotic but anti-commensal drugs in humans resemble those of antibiotics. Sometimes people that take SSRIs all of a sudden become constipated, or they have changes in their bowel movements. Moreover, one could speculate that pharmaceuticals used regularly in our times may be a contributing factor to a decrease in the diversity of the microbiota in modern Western societies. I find it ironic and terrible that somebody that's suffering from depression that might really need more lactobacillus to help their body produce more serotonin is taking an SSRI drug that's going to wipe out potentially the bacteria that's what they need in order to get their brains back on track. Okay, so I've spent a lot of time on this. Altered gut environment, antibiotics, diet, stress, that all contributes to dysbiosis. And dysbiosis is that microbial imbalance, the maladaptation, the wrong types of bacteria in the body. When you wipe out the good bacteria, it gives a space for the bad bacteria to grow. When you are healthy and happy, when you have homeostasis and balance in your gut, there are commensal bacteria, they're producing vitamins and neurotransmitters for you, they're stimulating a tolerant immune response, your immune system is not producing excess inflammation, everything is happy and healthy. When you have dysbiosis, when you have the wrong types of bacteria, infectious bacteria, bad bacteria, whatever, that leads to a dysregulated immune response. That leads to a defect in the barrier, a leaky gut, which we're going to really define pretty clearly in just a second, and a dysregulated immune system, triggering of the immune system, loss of nutrients, impacts the vagus nerve, impacts the rest and digest response. Stress then further causes that barrier defect. This is all really important. As I alluded to before, 70% of your immune system is located in the gut. 70% of your immune system is checking out all of the food that you're eating. 70% of your immune system is making sure that your bacteria in your gut are the right types of bacteria. It's a two-way street. The bacteria in your gut ensure that your immune system is behaving properly. And the immune system actually encourages the right types of bacteria to live there. Pat each other's backs. So on the left-hand side over here, your healthy gut environment, just imagine for me, we're not looking at a cross-section of your intestines as if you're looking down the tube. We're looking at a single cell kind of lining of your gut over here. So just follow along with me. The gut lumen up here, this is where all of your food passes through, your poop passes through, your bacteria are hanging out, etc. There's a mucus layer where healthy bacteria like to play. And then there's the healthy epithelial barrier. Now, this is incredible. You have this barrier of epithelial cells, very similar to the types of cells that are in your skin layer. But it is only one cell thin, wide. It is only one cell thin. It has to be thin enough in order to absorb nutrients, proteins, amino acids, vitamins from the gut lumen. But it has to be resilient enough to prevent undigested food particles and bacterial toxins from crossing the barrier. If the healthy epithelial barrier is intact, then you have all of the immune cells chilling on the other side, and they're like, hey, it's all good. Healthy immune response. As a result of dysbiosis and a decrease in probiotic peacekeeping bacteria, an increase in infectious bacteria damages that sensitive barrier and causes bacterial toxins to cross that barrier, triggering immune cells. At its core, this is leaky gut. Okay? So now, leaky gut. I'm going back to the paper that I first showed you right at the very beginning of this presentation. The GI barrier adjacent to the GI microbiota appears to be key to understanding the complex mechanisms that maintain gut health. Any impairment of the GI barrier can increase the risk of developing infectious, inflammatory, functional GI diseases, as well as diseases outside of the intestines, extraintestinal diseases such as immune-mediated and metabolic disorders. Immune-mediated diseases, because 70% of your immune system is right around your gut, can be kicked off slowly over time by increased damage of that barrier. That if the cell wall or in your intestines becomes disrupted, that bacterial toxins leak across, wind up in your bloodstream, wind up in your lymphatic system, and can slowly over time aggravate your immune system. Your immune system becomes less tolerant, becomes more difficult to maintain. It can lead to chronic inflammation over time. There's studies demonstrating that bacterial toxins from the gut can leak and actually wind up in the joints, triggering osteoarthritis. I'm going to show you that paper in a second. Part of the reason for that is that in dysbiosis, there's a certain type of bacteria that really starts to expand, so-called gram-negative bacteria. Gram-negative bacteria, one of their markers is a molecule in the cell wall of that bacteria called lipopolysaccharide. LPS is a big promoter of inflammation. So what happens is the LPS sheds across basically all these bacteria are fighting with each other in the gut, they're dying, that LPS breaks apart, sheds across the barrier, enters the bloodstream. Your immune cells say, I don't like that. I don't like seeing that LPS one bit at all, starts to respond in a heavy-handed manner, causes damage to other organs. So example, fatty liver disease. It's considered related to blood sugar imbalances, metabolic syndrome. But in the research, there's a lot of evidence pointing towards LPS from bacteria leaking across the gut into the liver, into around the pancreas, whatever, causing imbalances in metabolism that might down the road contribute to fatty liver disease. Both systemic and local LPS from bacteria are associated with knee osteoarthritis severity and inflammation. So LPS found in the blood, as well as LPS that trickled into joints, might be associated with the pain on what was previously thought to just be bone-on-bone arthritis, really might have an immune, metabolic, microbiome related component over here. I love this one. This is a peer-reviewed scientific journal article. Marital distress is associated with leaky gut. Depression and leaky gut. Folks, leaky gut is not a term for hippies anymore. These are doctors talking about this stuff now, okay? Translocation of that bacterial endotoxin, LPS, as a pathway to inflammation. Okay, take a look. Participants with more hostile marital interactions had a higher level of that bacterial toxin than those that were less hostile. This data illustrates how a distressed marriage and mood disorder history can promote pro-inflammation through increased leaky gut, thus fueling other inflammation. All right, so they're now finding that this barrier dysfunction, this leaky gut, could be associated with a number of different issues. Permeability has been increased permeability has been described in patients with inflammatory bowel disease, you're not digesting properly, irritable bowel syndrome, alcoholic liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, type 1 and type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, chronic heart failure, depression, and other types of issues. Take care of your gut. Stop stressing as much. Watch what your food sources are. Eat organic foods. Eat organic vegetables, not pesticide sprayed, glyphosate Roundup sprayed vegetables. But I want you to keep in mind this list over here, this list of everything that leaky gut is associated with. I'm going to thread this needle for you because there's another component to the conversation that needs to be touched upon. Modulating something called your endocannabinoid system in human health and disease holds therapeutic promise for a broad range of diseases, including neurodegenerative diseases, cardiovascular diseases, inflammatory disorders, obesity, metabolic syndrome, pain, and others. Hey, wait a minute. All the things that this endocannabinoid system thing sounds like it might be involved with sounds a lot like what that leaky gut thing might be involved with too. Well, the endocannabinoid system is the primary target of CBD. CBD works by and large by promoting balance within our endogenous cannabinoid system, ECS. Wait a minute. If you didn't hear me speak last year at Tulsi, then perhaps you were not aware that you produce your own cannabis molecules in your brain. You produce them in your gut, your skin, your liver, your lungs. It's all over the place. The endocannabinoid system is found basically in every tissue in the body. And CBD then works primarily on regulating certain aspects of the endocannabinoid system. In fact, it was one of my science heroes over here, Dr. Vincenzo Di Marzo, wrote that it is our endocannabinoid system that is essential to life, and it relates messages that affect how we relax, eat, sleep, forget, and protect. I had the chance to meet him at the International Cannabinoid Research Symposium last year. Sad I can't go this year due to COVID and whatnot, but what he presented on last year, his students presented all of their latest findings on the relationship between the endocannabinoid system and the gut and the microbiome, that the bacteria of our gut directly speak to our brain through the endocannabinoid system. So, I was pretty excited about this. I got my selfie with him. He was a little bit weirded out as why I was treating him like a celebrity. He signed my book, but he really has done so much to help us understand some of the intricacies of this cannabis-like system in our bodies, and the fact that we have cannabinoid receptors, that you find CB1 receptors in the brain, you find them throughout the body, you find the CB2 receptors within the immune system, that they're finding that if you're deficient in certain aspects of these receptors, clinical endocannabinoid deficiency is associated with migraines, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel syndrome. Hey, wait a minute. Leaky gut is associated with irritable bowel syndrome. And if you're deficient in your body's cannabis-like molecules, that this might be associated with irritable bowel syndrome. Which then leads me to this next slide over here. The probiotic Lactobacillus acidophilus modulates intestinal pain and induces cannabinoid receptors. Some of the reasons why the probiotics might help you in the refrigerator section at Tulsi directly have to do with speaking to the receptors of your cannabis-like system in your gut. because we do have these cannabinoid receptors all throughout our body. And it turns out that the research suggests that they control how tight those junctions are going to be, how tightly held together your gut epithelial barrier will be. This is crucially important. That's what the latest research is pointing to. But we don't need the latest research in order to demonstrate this to us. I just want to highlight the fact that cannabis has been used by humans for at least the last 10,000 years for a number of applications. So let's go back to the holy book of Zoroastrianism, 600 BCE. They're talking about the use of cannabis in digestive disorders, for pain, for a number of other issues. In India, for diarrhea. There's a long history of using cannabinoids from the hemp plant or from medical cannabis to help digestive disorders. And the new research is demonstrating this. Take a look at this. CBD prevents inflammation-induced leaky gut in a randomized placebo-controlled human double-blind study. Hey, that's pretty cool. I like to talk about this article a lot. This is a human clinical trial. Those are very expensive to do. Gold standard in clinical research. They actually found that CBD, as well as this other endocannabinoid-like molecule that I think is very cool, called PEA, 2 3-letter acronyms. CBD and PEA and CBD and PEA both reduce leaky gut in humans. Well, PEA is kind of hard to find, but CBD is widely available. And I think one of the reasons why it might be helping people with stress and joint comfort and a number of, sleep issues even, might be because it is directly controlling gut health. As is evidenced by the study that shows that it's supporting the integrity of the gut epithelium. So now, this is a new study as well. This came out about a year ago. This is where things get really wacky. We're almost at the end of the presentation here. I really appreciate everybody's attention. Just a little bit more science to chew through. There's a combination drug called Sativex. It's a combination of the psychoactive cannabis component called THC. That's what gets you high, as well as CBD. And it's actually used in a lot of European countries for treatment of MS spasticity, multiple sclerosis related spasticity. So in this article over here, they're studying that combination of the two cannabinoids, THC and CBD. One gets you high, one does not, against this experimental version of multiple sclerosis. And it turns out that the gut microbiome is very, very involved. Now, I mentioned the Sativex drug over here, available in places like Germany. I mean, you can see on the package here, Spray zur Anwendung in der Mundhöhle. That's how you're supposed to take it. Spray it in your mouth. The person that's taking this product is only taking about 30 milligrams a day of CBD. That's actually not that different than what you might get in a supplement version of CBD minus the THC component. Now, because this Sativex drug has THC in there, you're not going to find it in the United States because THC is still a Schedule 1 substance according to the Drug Enforcement Administration. Anyway, that's another story. Hopefully it will get approved here at some point because it does seem to be very effective for treatment of MS-related pain. So they're studying this in rodents over here. There's a rodent study. I'm going to go through some of the graphs. They're giving them the combination of THC and CBD. And not surprisingly, their clinical scores, their symptoms related to multiple sclerosis very significantly are decreased when they're being treated with THC and CBD. Something wacky happens. The authors themselves the scientists are really interested in seeing what happens in the microbiome. And they do all these studies, and they find that when you give the THC and the CBD, that it changes what species, what probiotics wind up in the microbiome of these rats that are given the Sativex drug, the THC and the CBD, the cannabis. It changes all these parameters associated with leaky gut. It reverses leaky gut that's associated with multiple sclerosis. So then they do what I think is just so cool. They treat rodents with the CBD and THC. They take the feces from those rodents and they do a fecal microbial transplant into rodents that just have multiple sclerosis. And then those rodents with MS start to get better. CBD and THC heals the brain, not necessarily through getting into the brain and reducing inflammation, but through changing the species of the bacteria in the gut. And that is what trains the immune system to do something different and to stop attacking the brain in MS. CBD and THC remodels the gut. You can do a fecal transplant from those rodents into another set of rodents, and then they get better. I just think that's profoundly fascinating and is profoundly telling on the potential that plant cannabinoids such as CBD from hemp might have on balancing an individual's overall response, overall health and well-being by promoting good gut bacteria. That we have the CBD that we should be treating as food that supports the gut microbiota, supports the brain, supports the liver, supports the immune system, and just normalizes the whole body connection. It normalizes the way that our body should be speaking with itself through regulating a number of different receptors, regulating the integrity of the gut epithelium, regulating the bacteria, trillions of bacteria that reside within your intestines. I just think it's fascinating that the hemp plant containing CBD can help people in so many different ways. This is the last slide, folks. We're almost done. Just think big with me for a moment. The hemp plant can be used to bring regenerative agriculture back to the United States. The hemp plant was a foundational part of the United States. The colonies would get taxed if they did not grow hemp. The British needed hemp back in the 1600s for sails, for rope, so they could fight the Spanish or whatever. Even in 1940s, right? The United States Department of Agriculture produced a documentary entitled Hemp for Victory. Hey, we need hemp for the ropes, for the war effort, World War II. It's not just war, it's not just rope. You can make hempcrete houses that are resistant to rot and fire. You can make car parts out of hemp. If anybody owns a BMW or something, that kind of classic slamming noise with the beamers, it's because the doors, the inside of the doors are filled with like a hemp-like, plastic-like hemp-derived material. You can derive food from hemp. So yeah, we should be growing everywhere in this country, but especially in places like West Virginia. I imagine a burgeoning industry of a hemp plant that can be used for food, for car parts, for fuels, for CBD that helps our cells. I'm thinking big picture here. That's why I have a picture of a galaxy, not just because the galaxy kind of looks like the cell. That you can cultivate something that impacts us at the bacterial level, the cellular level, the psychological level, the sociological level, the political level. CV Sciences helped to form the U.S. Hemp Roundtable. And the U.S. Hemp Roundtable was instrumental in getting the Farm Bill passed with the word CBD in the Farm Bill. So thank you for your efforts. Thank you, Tulsi, for carrying our products and recognizing what it takes to support a good quality CBD brand that cares about the intention behind the product and cares about bringing a brighter future to this country and the world. And I also want you to keep in mind some closing thoughts for you. Our endocannabinoid system is still mysterious. That doctor I was showing you, Dr. Vincenzo Di Marzo, has only been researching this stuff for 20, 30 years now. And in the realm of science, for a new system, that is very new. So if you were going to ask, what dose of CBD do I take? What product should I take? Look for a product that has excellent quality controls, that offers up a QR code on the label so that you know, a little barcode, so that you know exactly what you're getting in the product. You can scan it, It brings you a third-party certificate of analysis so that you know there aren't any pesticides or heavy metals that might disrupt your microbiome in there. Because hemp is a bioaccumulator, great for cleaning up our atmosphere. Also, keep in mind, you want to look out for CBD companies that are involved with these industry-wide efforts to bring hemp back to the people. And also keep in mind that because our endocannabinoid system is mysterious, your dose might be different than my dose. Start low, work your way up. But what I want to encourage you to do is to take CBD every day, the same way that you would take your probiotic, your multivitamin, your fish oil, because they're going to have a long-term restorative, nutritive, nourishing effect on the whole body. Play around with it. Empower yourself. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to give you a prescription of, say, take 15 milligrams for this and call me in the morning. Discover for yourself what it means to take CBD, to engage with the hemp plant, and to engage with your local community by shopping at local stores such as Tulsi at the market. Thank you so much for your time today. I sincerely appreciate it. We do have some time for questions. If you have any questions, type them into the chat. I will be told what the questions are. Also, feel free to call me. Feel free to email me. I can send you the slide deck. All these resources are available for you. Thank you for your time today.
Hi, Miles. This is Melissa with CV Sciences. Thank you so much for our presentation for Tulsi today. I think we'll wrap up with just one question, which I think you will enjoy answering because it touches on what I know to be your favorite PlusCBD product. And it is, can you touch on CBDA versus CBD as it relates to the gut?
Yes. So this is a fantastic question. And you'll notice that throughout this presentation, I really did not want to make this an advertisement, so you barely saw any PlusCBD oil products. But for gut health, my favorite product is our raw hemp extract. That CBDA molecule doesn't get into the brain very well, but appears to have different effects on inflammation. So I really love it for regulating a healthy inflammation response. That is our raw product. It has a maroon or reddish kind of label, a brownish label. It's a lower dose, but that's okay. The studies actually show that the CBDA molecule in a raw hemp extract is more potent than CBD when it comes to things like inflammation or digestive health. We have stories of, man, I mean, I could show you the slides for this at some point. I could send them to anybody if they really want to see them. We have stories of babies that had terrible eczema and terrible digestion issues, you know, kind of textbook leaky gut related dysfunction. And they were taking just a couple of drops of the raw hemp extract, and all that stuff vanished in a couple of weeks. All that eczema vanished, digestion significantly improved. We have a story of a woman with lupus. Lupus is another autoimmune microbiota related dysfunction type of syndrome disease. There's studies that link the microbiota to lupus. And so this woman's lupus was manifesting as skin irritations. And what she was doing is taking the raw soft gels by mouth, but she was also taking the raw soft gels and cracking them open, mixing them with some emu oil and rubbing it on the skin. The before and after photos are kind of crazy. I mean, it's really quite a bright difference. So yes, the raw hemp extract is one of my favorites. Now I know a lot of folks are on our gold formula, and our gold formula is wonderful for those that need the extra support, especially as it relates to pain management. So a lot of folks maybe with a degenerative or an inflammatory painful issue are using the gold formula. What I would suggest for you is to stay with the gold and incorporate the raw. Oftentimes the gold formula, since it's a higher CBD potency, can cause a little bit of sleepiness. So how about this? Take the gold at night and then take the raw in the morning. Lower potency, the CBDA in the raw doesn't get into the brain as much. So yeah, there are different products with PlusCBD oil that might have different effects. And they can be used at different times. They can be incorporated into your overall health in different ways. So yeah, play around with it.
Quickly with, we've just got a couple of minutes left, but if you can address briefly dosing and if you have a CBD regimen, what that looks like. And then
Sure.
so that we finish right on the hour.
So again, I said play around with the dose, start low, work your way up. Now we just did a clinical trial. Woohoo! This just came out like last week on 15 milligrams once a day significantly does help people. I usually tell people to start lower than that. If gut health is your primary concern, consider taking the raw soft gels once or twice a day. If you're dealing with a painful issue, again, I'm not a doctor, but if you're dealing with some excess inflammation that you need some support for, try taking a raw soft gel in the morning, maybe a gold at night. If you like the liquids and you're dealing with occasional stress, our beginner product is our green spray. It's $20 at the store. It should be about that much before any sale or anything. A couple of sprays under the tongue, really great if something's stressing you out, if you just want a chill pill. Maybe you're trying to not drink as much alcohol to relax at nighttime. You can make a mocktail with some CBD by spraying it into like some seltzer or something. You might not mix that well, you know, play around with it, right? Again, empower yourself. There's no strict regimen here. You can play around with different modalities. And don't just ask me, ask the folks at Tulsi at the Market, because I'm sure they have ways in which they've incorporated CBD into their overall health and lifestyle, and they'd be more than happy to deliver to you their suggestions too. Thank you all. Take care.